Thank you very much for coming today. It's really nice to see so many of you again, and it's really lovely to have you all back. So this is quite a special event for me as a researcher, because I've never done anything like this where we get people who've taken part in the research back and tell them what we found. So it's really exciting for me, and I hope it's really exciting for you to find out what we found from your study. So thank you very much for coming. So just to give you an overview of what we're going to be doing today, I'm going to spend about half an hour talking to you about what we found. There'll be an opportunity for questions as well throughout that. Then about 1:15, we're going to have an arts workshop with our three artists who are there, Jevi, Emma and Jordana, who is moving her car. So they'll be telling you about what they're going to be doing with you, and that will last about an hour. Towards the end of the arts activity, afternoon tea is going to arrive. It's going to arrive at the back, so feel free to kind of help yourselves and continue with the arts activity. If you don't want to take part in the arts activity, that's absolutely fine. You can just sit and chat amongst yourselves as well. So to give you a bit of background about the project, most of you will know this because we will have chatted about it when we met, and you would have been briefed on the project. It's a collaboration between Ignite Imaginations, headed by Louisa, who's here with us today. Give us a wave, Louisa. And it's a collaboration between Louisa and Professor Peter Stottel, who's also here at the back. Peter. And they teamed up to write a proposal to the Arts Council to look at the relationship between arts and wellbeing, which was successful, which is why we're all here today. So we know that there's quite a lot of evidence to suggest that the arts are related to health and well-being. There was actually a really nice report published by the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Arts, Health and Wellbeing, summarising lots of evidence about this idea that arts is related to health and wellbeing. There's loads of evidence in there, so I suggest you read it if you're interested, but just a kind of few highlights that I thought were interesting studies. There was one that showed playing music to premature babies reduced their heart rates and reduced parental stress. A 10-week group drumming session reduced rates of depression and anxiety, and also rates of inflammation in the body. And probably my favourite is a study that looked at the effects of going to an art gallery for 35 minutes during your lunch break, and that showed that people who went to the art gallery had reduced levels of stress and also reduced cortisol levels, and we know that cortisol is a biomarker of stress. So those are just a few interesting kind of examples of ways in which arts is related to well-being in a positive way. And what we wanted to do in this project was to look at the relationship between art and well-being, but perhaps in a slightly different way to previous research. So the way that we've conceptualised the arts is as an encounter with another person's imagination. So what you're doing when you go and watch a film, or when you go to the theatre, or even when you watch a soap opera, is you're choosing to engage with a simulated world that is created from the imagination of an artist. The arts aren't just a form of leisure or fun and entertainment, they're actually an engagement with somebody else's imagination. And so when we view arts as encounters with other people's imaginations, we start to think about it a little bit differently. And we were really interested in this idea of arts as encounters rather than looking at the benefits of participating in arts, because there is actually quite a lot of research to suggest that doing art is beneficial for well-being, but art is also around us in lots of different ways, and we don't necessarily have to do art to get well-being benefits. So what do I mean by well-being? It's quite a broad concept, and it can mean lots of different things to lots of different people. We're really focusing on well-being from a psychological perspective, and there's kind of three aspects that we're looking at. The first is positive emotions, so feeling good and not feeling bad. The second is life satisfaction, so that's an evaluation that you're satisfied with your life, and together these are called subjective well-being. But there's also an element of needing to feel like you have a purpose in life, that you are fulfilling meaningful goals and that you can make sense and meaning out of your experiences. And this is something called eudaimonic well-being, and this is another aspect of well-being which perhaps people don't look at or don't consider as fully as they do the other aspects. So just to give you, that's kind of a bit of a background about the approach that we're taking to well-being and what we mean by well-being, and hopefully that should kind of help with understanding what the results of the study were. So at that point, if anybody's got any comments or questions or anything that isn't clear and they want me to go over again, just give me a wave. Anybody? So it was completely clear, no. Okay. That was good. Great. Well, there'll be opportunities for questions throughout, so just feel free to stop me at any point. So study 1. So what you'll see, what you would have noticed from your labels is that you'll have either study 1 or study 2 on there. So we did 2 studies and we've got people here from both. Study 1 was a smartphone study where we asked you to answer questions about your engagement with the arts, and study 2 was an audiobook study where you listen to an audiobook. So those of you in study 2 will have the name of your audiobook written there, so that's in case you want to go and find somebody that's that listened to the same audiobook as you. So for study 1, we wanted to take our conceptualisation of the arts as encounters with other people's imaginations and see how frequently these kinds of things occur in daily life. And we wanted to test whether these encounters have an impact on your well-being. So does engaging with the arts in this way impact your well-being in a positive or a negative way, for example? And does this depend on the kind of arts activity that you're doing and also the type of well-being that we look at? So positive emotions, life satisfaction and purpose in life. So this should be familiar to some of you who did this study. The people that we asked to do the study, we text them twice a day for 10 days, which might have got a little bit annoying. No, it wasn't annoying at all. And we asked people to fill out an online survey to tell us about the arts activities that they'd engaged with so far that day. So we had a list of arts activities and we asked people whether they'd engaged with them and also for how long they'd engaged with them. And then we also asked people about their well-being. So we wanted to get a snapshot of people's well-being in the 5 minutes leading up to before they answered the survey. So this is just a small snapshot of well-being rather than asking about the whole of that day. And we asked people to fill this out, which they did very well and meant that we got lots of nice, lovely data to look at. So thank you very much. So people who took part, we had 50 people take part, quite a few of you are here today. So just hands up people who are here from study 1. We've got less people from study 1. Oh, you're all scattered all over the room, but yeah, so everyone else here from study 2. Aged between 20 and 69 with an average age of 37. Just over 3/4 were female. And so from those 50 people with the 10 text messages over a course, 20 text messages over the course of 10 days, we got 854 responses, which is a really good response rate. So what we did was we distilled the arts encounters into different categories. So we've got audio arts, which was listening to recorded music. We've got screen arts, which was watching films or things like drama, soap operas, things like that. We've got live arts, which included performing arts, theatre, live music. Literary arts, which included fictional books, poetry, comics. And visual arts, which included things like drawings, photography, paintings. Oh, I've given it all away. So hopefully you didn't see that. But I was going to get you all to guess which one was the most popular. So you'll also see up here we asked about sports. So as a comparison, we asked whether people had engaged with any sports activities. So I just want some votes for what people think was the most frequently engaged with out of those categories. Music? TV?
It depends whether it's male or female, surely.
Okay.
The males would be
Good.
sport and the females would be books or TV, and she think.
TV?
Yeah.
Do you want to see? So we've got different.
TV and stuff.
Right, so those of you who said screen arts and TV were right, so that was the most frequently engaged with over the 10 days, so 275 times. Followed by music, so those who guessed music were also nearly right. Followed by literary arts, followed by visual arts, and then at the rear live arts. So live arts was the least frequently engaged with over the 10 days from all the people that took part. And that probably makes sense. You might watch more TV than go to, a theatre performance or something. But what's interesting is that when you look at the amount of time that people are spending on these activities, it's slightly different. So even though people spend less time engaged, even though people spend are less frequently engaged with live arts, they spend quite a lot of time doing it. So they spend about 1.8 hours on average doing it, and that kind of makes sense. So if you're going to like a live music event, you might be there for 2 hours or something. Screen arts was also people spent quite a lot of time watching TV and films, about 1.5 hours each time, followed by music, and then visual arts, and then literary arts. So that's quite interesting because it suggests that we are spending quite a lot of time engaged with these activities, and we do so quite frequently in our daily lives.
Were those the sort of average times
per each time that you said that you did it, and that could have been averaged over multiple times, because do you remember we asked you over the last half day, and you might have listened to music at several points, so it was does that make sense?
Yeah.
So overall, across all the arts activities, people spent an average of 3 hours and 38 minutes a day engaged with arts activities, which is quite a lot. And it's nearly double the average amount of time that people spend with sport. And that could be because the kinds of people that maybe were interested in taking part in the research were more sporty than arty, probably. But it's still really interesting as a comparison. And we also found that your engagement with the arts is a lot higher on the weekends than on the weekdays, which you might expect because you've probably got a bit more free time. But not that much different, so there's about an hour in it.
Is there any variation between the days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday?
Oh, we didn't look at that, so we compared weekend and weekday. But yeah, it would be really interesting to know that, because I know some people who do research on days of the week, so certain events or certain things are more likely to happen on certain days of the week, like car accidents are more likely to happen on a Thursday or something like that. But yeah, that would be really interesting to look at.
Did it vary between male and female?
I don't think we looked at Peter. Did we look at? I don't think we looked at that. We did look at differences between well-being according to male and female, and I think we controlled for gender and age as well. But no, we didn't look. But again, that's something that we could look at and look at the breakdown. Unfortunately, we haven't got that many men in the sample, so it's more female, so it could be harder to test that. But it's worth looking at, I think. And the key thing that we were really interested in was whether arts had an impact on well-being. So did what you do arts-wise have an impact on how you're feeling in that snapshot that we got of your well-being? And the first thing we looked at was whether doing versus not doing an activity had an impact on your well-being. And what we found was that doing versus not doing live arts was associated with all of the types of well-being that we measured. So emotional well-being, life satisfaction and purpose in life. And visual arts and literary arts, doing each of those was also associated with higher levels of purpose in life, but none of the other aspects of well-being. And we didn't find any relationship between doing versus not doing audio arts, screen arts or sports to well-being. So some arts seem to be related to well-being, but some don't. And you might be wondering whether there's a dosage effect. So if you do more arts, do you get more of a benefit? So if you spend longer engaged with live arts, do you get more satisfaction with life, for example? So we tested that next. And we found that you do for some activities. So for live arts, visual arts and literary arts, the more time you spend engaged with those activities, the greater all aspects of your well-being. So it seems like putting more time in here, you're getting the benefit from it, well-being wise. And with screen arts, even though engaging versus not engaging with it wasn't related to well-being, the more time you spent engaged with screen arts, the greater your life satisfaction. And that might relate to perhaps the ability to do what you want with your time, perhaps, I don't know. Audio arts, again, was not related to well-being. Time spent in audio arts wasn't related to well-being, which was a little bit surprising because music is something that, I think a lot of us think is related to well-being. And again, sports wasn't related to well-being either. So, in summary, from the first study, I think there are a few kind of take-home messages. The first is that we actually spend quite a lot of time engaged with the products of other people's imagination through art. And some arts can have a positive impact on our well-being, and that doesn't mean just feeling good. It also means things like, feeling like your life has purpose. And just engaging with the arts can have an impact, but there's also a dosage effect. The more you do it, the more benefit you get. And there seems to be something really special about live arts and well-being, and this is actually something that we found in some other research that we've done, and we're wondering why. There seems to be this real connection between live arts and well-being, and it'd be interesting to know your thoughts on that. We wondered whether it might be because live events are typically social, so you're with other people, and that could have an added benefit, or it could be that there's less of a barrier between the art form and yourself, so there's more of a connection, so you get more benefit. So it'd be interesting to know what you thought about that. But there does seem to be something special happening. So that's what we found from the first study. Any comments or questions on that we haven't covered that anyone would like to know?
Do you have any plans to research into, like, because you were just taking that 5-minute snapshot and saying oh, this isn't connected to well-being, but it could be connected to a much longer term general well-being. Do you have any plans?
It would be really interesting to. So the second study that we've done was kind of looking at well-being over a longer time scale. So we were looking at whether reading, a specific activity of reading a book, could improve well-being over time. But yeah, you're right. There might not be effects so closely in time. But yeah, no, it would be really interesting to test that.
I'm surprised that music isn't one of them. Just
Yeah.
because it seems like such an emotional stimulant.
I know.
Or something.
I wonder, it might be, it's really interesting to think about why that might be. It could be that sometimes music makes you feel worse and sometimes it makes you feel better, so it might level out and nothing happening. So the motivations for why people listen to music is really interesting, and I think people quite often do it to regulate their emotions, but it could, but yeah, it's interesting.
I was interested in the the
Sport.
The sport, yes. I would have thought that there would have been a relationship between well-being and sport. I did too.
So
It's counterintuitive.
Yeah. So again, with sport, it was viewing, or attending sporting events rather than doing sport. So it could again be that if you don't get the outcome you want with a sporting event, it doesn't necessarily make you feel better. I don't know. It depends on the outcome.
That makes sense. With the music one, do you think you'd have had more feedback if the people that you were looking at actually took part, they actually played an instrument or they sang?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, it might, because there's probably likely to be differences between, who you are and what benefit you get. So if you're a musical person, you might derive more benefit from listening to music, definitely, or playing an instrument.
Could the music be due to a sort of saturation effect in that we tend to be so accustomed to music always being there, but when you listen to it, there's no differential between one situation and another situation, because we're just saturated with it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and that might also explain why live arts is so connected to wellbeing, because it's less frequent and we're not saturated with it. And actually with music, I do also wonder whether the way that we listen to music might have an effect. So we don't, we might tend to listen to it in kind of a little bit here and there, but not really sit down and listen to it in the same way that we would if we were listening to live music.
So would that be similar, perhaps, if you were all watching an orchestra live? That has a similar effect to live art?
Yeah, so included in live arts was things like watching an orchestra or being at a gig or something like that. So that includes music, but just live music. Does that answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just I was just wondering, is there, I'm trying to work out why live art would be more beneficial?
Yeah.
Is it because people are having to process what they're seeing and interpreting the art itself themselves rather than having to share it? Or
It might be a more immersive experience.
the sport, passively know what's going to happen regardless once you know the rules, whereas in art it's a bit different, like it changes and it's never really the same each time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It would be interesting to see whether live sports is different to not live sports. So when you're at a football match, you get greater benefit than when you're watching on the TV. That could be like a nice comparison. But yeah, it's really intriguing why live arts had such a
So
special.
you're becoming more involved with live arts than you do on the screen.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's less of a barrier, isn't there,
You
between.
feel part of it.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, if somebody was watching this presentation on YouTube, they might feel different to you sitting here because it's live, it's in person. But how do you kind of measure that? I guess that's.
But Julie, I'm sorry, I'm doing a bit of archaeology in my brain at the moment. Didn't the Greeks have something about this performance stuff that you identify with the characters, and it has a cathartic effect?
Oh, catharsis. Yeah. Oh no, that's interesting.
Do you not know that?
No.
Oh, okay.
I've heard about catharsis.
Yeah, but
it was
it's
related
the
to
people, the
performance.
audience identifying with the characters on the stage and then being cleansed by what they do. You
Interesting,
kind of
like
identify with them.
Yeah.
Also, like live music, and I guess there's going to be musical accompaniment and whatever, theatre and stuff. That affects you physically as well, doesn't it? So in a way that it doesn't necessarily because of just the volume of sound.
Yeah.
More
Yeah,
from a
yeah.
special effort as well with something live. You know, football match, you're wearing the colours
Yeah.
of your team, or you might dress up to go to the theatre, or go with friends.
It's more of an event,
perhaps,
isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, all of those things.
I think if you're paying to go to a live
Yeah.
that has a big impact
Yeah.
on, I must enjoy it. So that might be a factor.
Yeah.
But you're investing yourself in it, aren't you?
Yeah.
And you're only really going to see what you've chosen to see.
That's it. Do you think that makes it more likely that you've got higher expectations though?
I think probably.
Yeah. So it was harder because it's like whenever I go to stand-up comedy, I find it harder to laugh because I'm almost like waiting for them to make me laugh.
Impress me.
Like tough crowd.
I mean, even with the screen, where does engaging with somebody else's art stop? Because the advertisements are entertaining in between, and if you're looking at a magazine, you're looking at photographs, so everything that you do, even this building, is somebody else's imagination.
Correct. Yeah.
And we're engaging with it because we're in it. So where does the line stop?
It's really difficult. I think this was something that we discussed quite a lot with people who took part because they said, it's all around me, and I think we suggested that it was when it was people's primary activity. So right now you might be engaged with the architecture here because it's around you, but you're not really focusing on it. You're focusing on me doing, or you might not be. You might be, looking. It is very nice. But yeah, so it's what's the focus of your attention, I guess. But again, it is still a really blurry line. I don't know whether you guys found that because you did study, people who did study one. Was it difficult to
find out which speech to put in?
Yeah, to differentiate between, what.
I think music is the most difficult because you usually listen to music while you work and stuff like that. But everything else, no.
Yeah.
Like when you watch a film, you watch the film,
Yeah.
But music's
harder.
Did you have any rules about what counts as like screen art? Just because it could be a grey area with things like, I don't know, the news. Is that art?
Yeah, so it had to be, the idea was it had to be fictional, so it were, so things like news documentaries wouldn't count in the same way that reading factual stuff wouldn't count. I remember, Omar, you just started reading a new factual book and you were like, oh yeah, this counts, and I was like, no it doesn't, sorry.
Something like Made in Chelsea or something where it's like...
Yeah, I guess it's like
it could get really like...
Yeah, and there are loads of fuzzy... There are loads of fuzzy boundaries like that, and I think we did leave it up to people to decide more for themselves whether they felt like they were engaging in fiction. But something like Made in Chelsea, I think we would probably say is factual, because it's reality.
And for anyone who's not usually interested in art, could they still benefit and improve their body?
It's a really good question, isn't it? We didn't actually in this study look at arts interests because it would have been really good to see whether that affects the results. So do you only, similar to what you were saying, Grace, now about people being into stuff to get benefit from it, so would we get more of an effect for people who are artists, let's say, versus, or musicians versus people who don't really like the arts? Yeah, it's a good question. Shall I move on to the second study? Great, so so study 2, which the rest of you who didn't do study 1 will have done, was a study looking at whether literary fiction can improve well-being over time. So we know from previous research that reading for pleasure and well-being are linked. So people who read a lot also report greater well-being. But we don't know whether it's the reading that's improving the well-being or whether perhaps people who have higher well-being just happen to read more. So the way that we wanted to test that was to do a kind of experiment, what we call an intervention study, where we get people to read a book and see whether it improves their well-being over time. And we were really interested in comparing fiction and non-fiction. So is there something special about fiction that might be related to well-being? So we had 94 people take part, so we wanted 90, we got 94, which was great, and thank you to all of you who took part, and also those that recommended their friends as well and spread the word, because that was so helpful in getting people involved. So we went over our target, which was fantastic. Participants were aged between 50 and 84 with an average age of 65, and again in this study the majority were female, so 85%. And this is what we asked you to do, so thank you all for doing this, because it was quite a difficult study. I think we asked you to do quite a lot. So when you met with us at the beginning of the study, you would have had what we call a baseline wellbeing assessment. So we asked you about your levels of wellbeing over the previous 2 weeks. And we asked you about various aspects of your wellbeing, including positive and negative emotions, life satisfaction, meaning in life, and also loneliness. Then we asked you to select a book. So we randomly allocated you to either read fiction, non-fiction, or a collection of short stories, and you didn't have a choice in that. But what you did have a choice in was what selection you listened to. So you've got a choice of 4. And I'll go through which ones are the most popular so you can see just out of interest. And we asked you to listen to your book on an MP3 player, which did have some technical difficulties for some people, but hopefully was Lorraine's nodding. I know, I had to send you a new one, didn't I?
It's fine.
I know. But hopefully most of you found it okay. And we asked you to listen to that over a period of a month. And then when you were about halfway through, we asked you to reflect on your well-being over that previous 2 weeks again. And then at the end of the book, we asked you about your well-being over that 2 weeks again. And then we asked you about your well-being again 2 weeks later, so 2 weeks after you'd finished reading. So you had 1, 2, 3, 4 well-being assessments at different points. And we also asked you what you thought about the book. So whether you were absorbed in the story, whether it was something that really grabbed your attention and transported you into a different world. And we also asked you about your evaluation of the book overall, so when you'd finished reading. So we asked you whether it was something that you enjoyed, whether it had made a lasting impression on you, and whether it was kind of thought-provoking as well. So here are the book selections. So fiction, these are the fiction. I have to say, this is really interesting to find out which ones were the most popular, because all of them had award-winning qualities. They all had really good ratings on things like Goodreads and Amazon, and some of them came up as a lot more popular than others, which I don't know why, but it was quite interesting. So fiction, Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry, was top, closely followed by Shadow of the Wind. So just hands up for people who were in fiction, just so you know who... Oh, not that many. Okay, great. And then short stories, the top was Pulse by Julian Barnes, closely followed by The Interpreter of Melodies, and nobody went for the Murakami book, which I was a little bit surprised about, but you know. So hands up if you're in the short stories. Yeah, great. And the non-fiction, this was the biggest surprise. So we basically had a hands down winner, which was Cure, and 22 people read that. So hands up if you were in the non-fiction. And did Cure, all of you? You were Cure. Cure, you were Cure. You were Cure. All of you were Cure. Yeah, great. So we wanted to test whether reading, and specifically reading fiction, would improve your well-being over that time period. So just from those of you who took part, hands up if you thought that it did improve your well-being. Yeah? Yeah? Yeah. Anybody who thought that it didn't really make a difference? Yeah. Anybody thought that it actually made them feel worse? Hope not. No one. Okay, well that's good. Okay. So what's interesting is that actually listening to fiction, non-fiction or short stories didn't improve your well-being over time. But what it depended on was the extent to which you were absorbed by the book and enjoyed the book, which I think makes a lot of sense. I can see a lot of people kind of nodding. Yeah. So remember we asked you about your absorption in the book, so, you know, how much your attention was captured by it, how much you were relating to the people and the events described in the book, and also your evaluation of the book overall, so whether you enjoyed it, whether it left you with a lasting impression. These things ended up being key to understanding whether your well-being improved or not. So what we looked at was whether your absorption, your levels of absorption during that first 2 weeks of listening was related to your well-being 2 weeks later. And what we found was that the higher your levels of absorption, the higher your levels of purpose in life, and the lower your levels of loneliness. So it seemed to affect those aspects of well-being rather than positive emotion or life satisfaction. And this, we also asked whether this had a lasting effect. So does the effect of absorption, so really, you know, being engrossed in your book, have an effect even on your well-being after you've finished listening to the book? So we looked at the well-being 2 weeks later, and we found that it did have a lasting effect, but only for purpose in life. So those of you who had really high levels of absorption in the book had a lasting effect of improvement in purpose in life 2 weeks after listening. And we looked at the same thing, similar thing with positive evaluation of the book. So those of you who really enjoyed your book and thought it, you know, made an impression on you. And people who had a more positive evaluation of the book had greater life satisfaction, purpose in life, and lower levels of loneliness in the last 2 weeks of the study. And again, we looked at whether this had a lasting effect, and it did, but only again for purpose in life. So I think that there's quite a few interesting things that come out of this study, and also the first study. The first thing is that literature seems to be connected to purpose in life. That's something we found from study 1 as well. There seems to be this connection between reading and feeling that your life is meaningful. And it's not all just about feeling positive. So, you know, other aspects of well-being, such as purpose in life, are really important to our well-being. And actually, purpose in life is related to longevity. So people who have greater purpose in life live longer. And what's interesting is that well-being really depends not on whether you're reading fiction or non-fiction or short stories, but on whether you're really engaged with the book and absorbed by it. There was a little bit of evidence to suggest that fiction was more absorbing and more enjoyable overall, but it wasn't that much of a meaningful difference. It might be that the non-fiction books that we picked were just too good, so they were just too good. And one thing that I think I'll certainly take away from this is that when you're reading, you should really pick books that kind of resonate with you and that you enjoy. And if you're not enjoying them, don't feel guilty about not finishing them, because you might be losing out on the benefit to well-being. So that's something that I'm gonna try and take away and not try and plough through a book that I'm not absorbed by. But thank you for all of those that did plough through the book for this study, even if you weren't enjoying it. Any questions or comments on the third study?
It's really a first world study, isn't it? Because if you go into other areas of the world, it's still storytelling.
Yeah.
So they would still perhaps get purpose in life from the storytelling that is handed down from generation to generation. We're very fortunate to be able to have audio books and real books and everything else. So
it's really interesting about the idea of like stories helping you to make meaning of your life as well and make life feel meaningful.
Well, while you were talking, she kept saying purpose in life, and Viktor Frankl's meaning of life. You know, in Auschwitz, you've got absolutely nothing, but you need to have that purpose, that meaning.
Yeah, that's where it comes from.
To survive.
Yeah.
So they haven't got any books either.
Exactly. Yeah, but they found meaning in other ways. Yeah. Thank you.
Whether we read fiction, non-fiction, or short stories, were they all audio?
Yeah. Yeah, all audio.
It annoyed me today.
Did it?
Me too. Did anybody else do short stories?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I read the Julian Barnes one, as soon as one had finished, because it's not in front of you, don't know that that's the last sentence, it got bugger and went on with another. time to take in what I've read.
It's interesting, isn't it?
And I found that really annoying now and I had to stop it, you know.
I'd forgotten that I was reading short stories. I thought it was a whole thing.
Oh, I've had that experience.
So actually I had nothing connected, so I felt a bit stupid when I realised I was wrong.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because we chose audiobooks to try and make it more accessible for people who didn't necessarily, you know, like reading or want to read. But actually, it's a really good question of whether it's really important that you're doing the reading and you're doing it at your own pace, in your own kind of mind and imagination.
See, I had no idea that was the last sentence, you know. And I thought, oh, it's finished. And then we're on with another. Immediately, there wasn't a break at all in the Julia Barnes one.
Really, yeah.
Great reader, but...
Yeah, but there wasn't a sense of moving on from story to story.
I wonder if people are doing it with Kindle or an actual book.
No, it was all audiobook. Yeah, that's a decision. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because in some ways, audiobook could be easier and could, you know, let your imagination go a bit more, but then it could be harder. And I think, again, it's one of those things that's really personal preference thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, some people, there was nodding about, you know, voices being irritating. And I think that's something that I would find with an audiobook.
It wasn't just the voices, it was the physical discipline of that's the only word I can use, of putting the things in and listening to it every day. I found that
difficult.
It was a discipline. So from that point of view, it was beneficial.
So I wear a hearing aid, so I only have one earbud in, but I still manage. But I like a book, and I think a lot of people like books.
Yeah.
But I don't plough through a book. You know, you were just saying you plough through. I don't. If I don't like it, that's it.
You've learned already. Yeah, that's good.
It's gone.
Yeah.
I don't waste my time.
Yeah. Do you never think, oh well, what if it gets really good at the end?
It never will. If it doesn't start off to engage you, then it's not.
That's probably true, actually. I don't think
it's not going to.
What was the connecting theme you were looking for when you picked the books?
So we selected, we had categories, so we had fiction, non-fiction and short stories, and we picked books that had award-winning qualities. We also picked, so they had an even gender balance, and so they were from UK and non-UK authors. So we whittled down, Peter and I had quite a fun process of going through and trying to choose books. And then we also did a focus group of people to listen to different extracts of the book as well.
Were these books, do they contain a moral in them, or something that people could easily read, or was it just fiction?
So the fiction ones, I guess you could take morals from the short stories and from the fiction books as well. I don't know. Is there anybody who actually listened to them?
Yeah,
no, Denise shaking.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, if anyone had read the non-fiction, like, what was it that you associated
With the non-fiction?
Yeah.
I liked it. Was a little bit like that. I felt at the end, I thought, wow, he went out to do something, and he certainly went through a lot of trials and tribulations, but actually did it in the end. And so many people set out to do something and they don't finish it because they hit, they hit all the wall or the barriers, and they've got to jump over hurdles. And so people don't finish doing something. So in the end it was, and I kept thinking, is he going to finish this? Is he not going to finish it? And he did. So, that's quite uplifting to know that, and yes, it is only fiction, but it happens every day for a lot of people that you don't hear about it very much. So it was good to read that. So it had that feel-good factor at the end.
Inspire you?
Yeah, because I suppose I'm a bit like that. Yeah, that if I start on something, I really do want to finish it, and I did not want to stop listening after 30 minutes. So I had the same problem as you with short stories. I had to come to the end of the chapter, and I've only got 5 more minutes reading to do, which didn't take me far enough into the chapter, to be satisfied that you'd done your half an hour.
You really stuck to it, didn't you?
You
did. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Did you?
Yeah, I looked at what time it was, and I then looked at the side of this, and I did stick to the half hour.
Did you? Oh, sorry.
I really tried not to go over it already. I might have done about 1 or 2 minutes.
So actually that affected your enjoyment of it a little bit?
It did in a way, but not. It didn't at that moment, but
not
then
overall.
they want the next day to come to read the next,
Yeah.
to listen to the next half
Yeah.
an hour,
Yeah.
you know, to see what followed on. And sometimes if I was really busy, I've got to really think about when I turned it on again and started reading again, I've got to quickly think back to what had happened at the beginning of the chapter, because they very often, it's totally different in a chapter ends and the next few words are totally unrelated to what's just happened. So I found that as well, that, you know, and then, this is what happened and this is where I am.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Did anybody drop off when you were listening?
Yes.
Horrific.
Yes. On the question now about well-being, schools are now they're wanting to get rid of music and arts.
Crazy.
Surely, is this something that you can now put forward to the government to say, look, you know, this is proof that we need this in schools to keep well-being in our kids?
There's actually quite a lot of evidence already out there about the benefits of doing art and creating art and engaging with art, and that's, I think, what that all-party parliamentary group are doing to connect it. And they talk about school-age children and stuff. But certainly, yes, this contributes to that evidence base, and actually, it contributes in a slightly different way because it's about not necessarily doing art, but encountering art in different ways. So, yeah.
Can I add to that as well? A friend of mine who's just graduating from uni, having done early child studies, and I was fortunate enough to support her. She was doing her essay writing and things. And one of the things that I found through her research is that it tends to go in cycles. A lot of the time you will get things like Ofsted who will go into schools that have taken away the arts and said, actually, arts are beneficial, you actually need to bring them in. So there are plenty of psychologists and studies and research that recognise the benefit of art, but then for some reason the government has to go, we don't want this, we want to just push English, maths and science, and then the students start to struggle again, and then they have to bring it back in. So it's kind of like a cycle. They don't really want to ever admit that art is beneficial, but they always recognise when it gets as the grades drop, they have to introduce in. And like, it doesn't matter if you are engaging in science, maths and English, it's how you engage in that. If you do it in a more creative way, that's more beneficial than just having to read a half copy.
A really interesting thing that we had at the Arts Council, we had a peer learning day, and people were trying to say what it was about the arts that was good, for kids, and they said you can't be wrong. You can never be wrong with the arts. Like, there's no right or wrong. It just is, and it's probably one of the only opportunities that kids are not told that's the wrong or the right answer.
And
So.
how can you measure that?
Exactly.
And if the government can't measure it, they don't like it.
Well, yeah. But you can measure things like that. But yeah, there is something special about it, I think.